We are on to part 2. So this is the last part. I am going to read it through the end just because, like I said, I love this book. But at this point, you do not need to continue listening to me read the story. So I'm going to make all of the questions that you could have answered based on what we read up until this point required. The two that are not going to be required are right here. Right, this one and this one, you'll notice when you do the quiz, they will not be required. If you don't finish reading, you won't know these answers. But those of you who want to hear the rest of the book, I am going to continue reading it. But like I said, if you don't want to continue reading it and you've already finished the first video, now you just need to take your quiz. Don't answer these two questions, and you'll be good. All right, the rest of the story. Sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund and all the rest of the Alson's army fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night. Only now, in daylight, they looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. I stopped there. I'd been reading for over an hour, and sleep still didn't come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight on under the sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep. But I was too afraid to turn it off. I was afraid of how dark it was outside the sleeping bag. When we got back to our section in the front of the movie screen, no one had even noticed we'd been gone. Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin and Summer and all the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how something bad had almost happened to me and Jack. It's so weird how that can be. How you could have have a night that's the worst in your life, but to everybody else, it's just an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I would mark this as being one of the most horrific days of my life. This and the day Daisy died. But for the rest of the world, this was just an ordinary day. Or maybe it was even a good day. Or maybe somebody won the lottery today. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me and Jack over to where we'd been sitting before, with Summer and Maya and Reed. And then they went and sat down where they had been sitting before, with Eczema and Savannah and their group. In a way, everything was exactly as we had left it before we went looking for the toilets. The sky was the same, the movie was the same, everyone's faces were the same, mine was the same. But something was different, something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what had just happened. I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me when they were talking. Even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering about it in the dark. News like that spread fast. It was what everyone was talking about on the bus ride back to the cabins. All the girls, even the girls I didn't know very well, were asking me if I was okay. The boys were talking about getting revenge on the group of 7th grade jerks, trying to figure out what school they were from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about what had happened, but they found out anyway. Maybe it was this torn sweatshirt and the bloody elbow, or maybe it was just that the teachers hear everything. When we got back to camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid's office, and while I was getting my elbow cleaned and bandaged by the nurse, Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the next room talking with Amos, Jack, Henry, and Miles, trying to get a description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces at all, which wasn't true. It's their faces that I kept seeing every time I closed my eyes to sleep. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me. The way the kid with the flashlight, Eddie, looked as he talked to me, like he hated me, like a lamb to slaughter. I remember Dad saying that ages ago, but tonight, I think I finally got what it meant. Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in the front of the school, along with the other parents, when the bus arrived. Mr. Tushman told me on the bus ride home that they had called my parents to tell them that there had been a situation the night before, but that everything was fine. He said that the camp director and several of the counselors went looking for the hearing aid in the morning while we all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Broarwood would reimburse us for the cost of the hearing aids, he said. They felt bad about what happened. I wondered if Eddie had taken the hearing aids with him as some kind of souvenir, something to remember the orc. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got off the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she would. Her hug felt good, and it didn't shake it off because, like some of the other kids were doing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and when I went to find mine, Mom talked to Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin, who had walked over. As I rolled my bag toward her, a lot of kids who usually don't say anything to me were nodding hello, patting my back as I walked by them. Ready? Mom said. When she saw me, she took my duffel bag. I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she wanted to carry me on her shoulders, I would have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we walked away, Mr. Tushman gave me a quick, tight hug, but didn't say anything. Home. Mom and I didn't talk much the whole walk home. When we got to the front stoop, I automatically looked in the front bay window because I forgot for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill, waiting for us to come home. It made me kind of sad when we walked inside. As soon as we did, Mom dropped my duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me and kissed me on my head and my faces like she was breathing me in. It's okay, Mom. I'm fine, I said, smiling. She nodded and took my face in her hands. Her eyes were shiny. I know you are, she said. I missed you so much, Augie. I missed you too. I could tell she wanted to say a lot of things, but she was stopping herself. Are you hungry? She asked. Starving. Can I have grilled cheese? Of course, she answered, and immediately started to make me a sandwich while I took my jacket off and sat down at the kitchen counter. Where's Via? I asked. She's coming home with Dad today. Boy, did she miss you, Augie, Mom said. Yeah? She would have liked the nature reserve. You know what movie they played? The Sound of Music. You'll have to tell her that. So, do you want to hear about the bad part or the good part first? I asked after a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. Whatever you want to talk about, she answered. Well, except for last night. I had an awesome time, I said. I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I feel like they ruined my whole trip for me. No, sweetie, don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, and that awful part lasted only an hour. Don't let them take that away from you, okay? I nodded. Did Mr. Tushman tell you about the hearing aids? Yes, he called us this morning. Was Dad mad because they're so expensive? Oh my gosh, of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you were all right. That's all that matters to us. And you don't let those thugs ruin your trip. I kind of laughed the way she said the word thugs. What? She asked. Thugs, I teased her. That's kind of an old-fashioned word. Okay, jerks, morons, imbeciles, she said, flipping the sandwich in the pan. Cretinos, as my mother would have said. Whatever you want to call them. If I saw them on the street, I would. She shook her head. They were pretty big, Mom, I smiled. 7th graders, I think. She shook her head. 7th graders? Mr. Tushman didn't tell us that. Oh my goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me? I said. And Amos was like, bam! He rammed right into their leader. They both crashed to the ground like in a real fight. It was pretty awesome. Amos' lip was bleeding and everything. He told us there was a fight, but, she said, looking at me with her eyebrows raised, I'm just so grateful. You and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think about what could have happened, she trailed off, flipping the grilled cheese again. My Montauk hoodie got totally shredded. Well, that can be replaced, she answered. She lifted the grilled cheese onto the plate and put the plate in front of me on the counter. Milk or white grape juice? Chocolate milk, please. I started to devouring the sandwich. Oh, can you do that in a special way you make it, with the froth? How did you and Jack end up at the edge of the woods in the first place, she said, pouring the milk into a tall glass. Jack had to go to the bathroom, I answered, my mouth full. As I was talking, she spooned the chocolate powder and started rolling the small whisk with her palms really fast. But there's a huge line, and he didn't want to wait, so we went towards the woods to pee. She looked up at me while she was whisking. I know she was thinking we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk in the glass had now a 2-inch froth on the top. That looks good, Mom. Thanks. And then what happened? She said, putting the glass in front of me. I took a long drink of the chocolate milk. Is it okay if we don't talk about this anymore right now? Oh, okay. I promise I'll tell you about it later when Dad and Via come home. I'll tell you every detail. I just don't want to have to tell the whole story over and over, you know? Absolutely. I finished my sandwich in 2 more bites and I gulped down the rest of the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jerks like that? I asked. Like, when I grow up, is it always going to be like this? She didn't answer right away, but took my plate and glass away and put them in the sink and rinsed them with water. There are always going to be jerks in the world, Augie, she said, looking at me. But I really believe, and Daddy really believes, that there are more good people in this earth than bad people. And the good people watch out for each other and take care of each other. Just like Jack was there for you and Amos and those other kids. Oh yeah, Henry and Miles, I answered. They're awesome too. It's weird because Miles and Henry haven't really been that nice to me during the year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. I guess. Want another glass of chocolate milk? No, I'm good, I said. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep too good last night. You should take a nap. Thanks for leaving me a Babu, by the way. You got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang and she answered. She started beaming as she listened. Oh my goodness! Really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yep, he's right here. He was about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Okay, see you in 2 minutes. She clicked it off. That was Daddy, she said excitedly. He and Via are just down the block. He's not at work, I said. He left early because he couldn't wait to see you, she said. So don't take a nap quite yet. 5 seconds later, Dad and Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms, and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let me go for a full minute, until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn. She kissed me all over like she used to do when I was little. It wasn't until she stopped that I noticed a big white cardboard box that they had brought in with them. What is that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling, and he and Mom looked at each other like they knew a secret. Come on, Augie, said Via. I opened the box. Inside was the cutest little puppy I'd ever seen in my life. It was black and furry, with a pointy little snout and bright black eyes, and small ears that flopped down. Bear. We called the puppy Bear because when Mom first saw him, she said she looked like a little bear cub. I said, that's what we should call him, and everyone agreed that that was the perfect name. I took the next day off from school, not because my elbow was hurting me, which it was, but so I could play with Bear all day long. Mom let Via stay home from school too, so the two of us took turns cuddling with Bear, playing tug of war with him. We had all kept all of Daisy's toys, and we brought them out now to see which ones he'd like best. It was fun hanging out with Via all day, just like the two of us. It was like old times, like before I started going to school. Back then, I couldn't wait for her to come home from school so she could play with me before starting her homework. Now that we're older, though, I'm going to school and have friends of my own that I hang out with. We never do that anymore. So it was nice hanging out with her, laughing and playing. I think she liked it too. The shift. When we got back to school the next day, the first thing I noticed was that there was a big shift in the way things were. A monumental shift, a seismic shift, maybe even a cosmic shift, whatever you want to call it. It was a big shift. Everyone, not just in our grade, but every grade, had heard about what had happened to us in the 7th graders. So suddenly I wasn't known for what I'd always been known for, but for this other thing that had happened. And the story of what had happened had gotten bigger and bigger each time it was told. 2 days later, the way the story went was that Amos had gotten into this major fist fight with this kid, and Miles, Henry, and Jack had thrown some punches at the other guys too. And the escape across the field became this whole long adventure through the cornfield maze and into the deep, dark woods. Jack's version of the story was probably the best because he's so funny. But whatever version of the story, and no matter who was telling it, 2 things stayed the same. I got picked on because of my face, and Jack defended me. And those other guys, Amos, Henry, and Miles, protected me. And now that they'd protected me, I was different to them. It was like I was one of them. They all called me little dude now, even the jocks. These big dudes I barely knew before would knuckle punch me in the hallways now. Another thing to come out of it was that Amos became super popular and Julian, because he missed the whole thing, was really out of the loop. Miles and Henry were hanging out with Amos all the time now, like they switched best friends. I'd like to be able to say that Julian started treating me better too, but that wouldn't be true. He still gave me dirty looks across the room. He still never talked to me or Jack, but he was the only one who was like that now, and me and Jack, we couldn't care less. Ducks. The day before the last day of school, Mr. Tushman called me into his office to tell me they had found out the names of the 7th graders from the nature retreat. He read off a bunch of names that it didn't mean anything to me. The last name, then he said the last name, Edward Johnson. I nodded. You recognize the name? He said. They called him Eddie. Right. Well, they found this in Edward's locker. He handed me what was left of my hearing aid headband. The right piece was completely gone and the left one was mangled. The band that had connected the two, the lobot part, was bent down in the middle. His school wants to know if you want to press charges, said Mr. Tushman. I looked at my hearing aid. No, I don't think so. I shrugged. I'm being fitted for new ones anyway. Why don't you talk about it with your parents tonight? I'll call your mom tomorrow to talk to her about it too. Would they go to jail? I asked. No, not jail, but they'd probably go to juvie court. Maybe they'd learn a lesson that way. Trust me, that Eddie kid is not learning any lessons, I joked. He sat down behind his desk. Augie, why don't you sit down a second, he said. I sat down. All of the things on his desk were the same as when I first walked into his office last summer. The same weird cube, the same little globe floating in the air. That felt like ages ago. Hard to believe it's almost over a year, huh? He said, almost like he was reading my mind. Yeah. Has it been a good year for you, Augie? Has it been okay? Yeah, it's been good, I nodded. I know academically it's been a great year for you. You're one of our top students. Congrats on high honor roll. Thanks, yeah, that's cool. But I know it's had its share of ups and downs, he said, raising his eyebrows. Certainly that night at the Nature Reserve was one of your low points. Yeah, I nodded. But it was kind of good, too. In what way? Well, you know, how people stood up for me and stuff. Yeah, that was pretty wonderful, he said, smiling. Yeah. I know in school things get a little hairy with Julian at times. I have to admit, he surprised me with that one. You know about that stuff? I asked him. Middle school directors have a way of knowing about a lot of stuff. Do you have, like, a secret security cameras in the hallways? I joked. And microphones everywhere? He laughed. No, seriously. He laughed again. No, not seriously. Oh. But teachers know more than kids think, Augie. I wish you and Jack had come to me about those mean notes that were left in your lockers. How do you know about that? I said. I'm telling you, middle school directors know all. Wasn't that big of a deal, I answered, and we wrote notes too. He smiled. I don't know if it's public yet, he said, though it will be soon anyway, but Julian Albans is not coming back to Beecher Prep next year. What? I said. I honestly couldn't hide how surprised I was. His parents don't think Beecher Prep is a good fit for him, Mr. Tushman continued, raising his shoulders. Wow, that's big news, I said. Yeah, I thought you should know. Then suddenly I noticed the pumpkin portrait that used to be behind his desk was gone, and my drawing, my self-portrait as an animal that I drew for the New Year art show, was now framed hanging behind his desk. Hey, that's mine, I pointed. Mr. Tushman turned around like he didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, that's right, he said, tapping his forehead. I've been meaning to show this to you for months now. My self-portrait as a duck. I nodded. I love this piece, Augie. When your art teacher showed it to me, I asked her if I could keep it on my wall. I hope that's okay with you. Oh, yeah, sure. What happened to the pumpkin portrait? Right behind you. Oh, yeah, nice. I've been meaning to ask you since I hung this up, he said, looking at it. Why did you choose to represent yourself as a duck? What do you mean? I answered. That was the assignment. But why a duck? He said. Is it safe to assume that it's part of a story of the duckling that turns into a swan? No, I laughed, shaking my head. It's because I think I look like a duck. Oh, said Mr. Tushman, his eyes opening wide. He started laughing. Really? Huh. Here I was looking for symbolism and metaphors, and sometimes a duck is just a duck. Yeah, I guess, I said, not quite getting what he thought was so funny. He laughed to himself for a good 30 seconds. Anyway, Augie, thanks for chatting with me, he said finally. I just want you to know it's truly a pleasure having you up here at Beecher Prep, and I'm really looking forward to the next year. He reached down across the desk and we shook hands. See you tomorrow at graduation. See you tomorrow, Mr. Tushman. The last precept. This one was written on Mr. Brown's chalkboard when we walked into English class for the last time. Mr. Brown's precept. Just follow the day and reach for the sun. Have a great summer vacation, class of 5B. It's been a great year, and you've been a wonderful group of students. If you remember, please send me a postcard this summer with your personal precept. It can be something made up for yourself or something you've read somewhere that means something to you. If so, don't forget the attribution, please. I really look forward to getting them. Tom Brown, 563 Sebastian Place, Bronx, New York. The drop off. The graduation ceremony was held in Beecher Prep's upper school auditorium. It was only a 15-minute walk from our house and the other campus building, but Dad drove me because I was all dressed up and had on new shiny black shoes that weren't broken in yet. And I didn't want my feet to hurt. Students were supposed to arrive in the auditorium an hour before the ceremony started, but we got there even earlier. So we sat in the car and waited. Dad turned on the CD player and our favorite song came on. We both smiled and started bobbing our heads to the music. Dad sang along with the song. Andy would bicycle across the town in rain and bring you candy. Hey, is the tie on straight? I said. He looked straight ahead, or he looked and straightened it in a tiny bit as he kept on singing, and John would buy the gown for you to wear to the prom. Does my hair look okay? I said. He smiled. Perfect, he said. You look great, Augie. Via put some gel in it this morning, I said, pulling down the sun visor, looking in the little mirror. It doesn't look too puffy? No, it's very, very cool, Augie. I don't think you've ever had it this short before. Have you? No, I got it cut yesterday. I think it makes me look grown up, don't you? Definitely. He was smiling, looking at me and nodding. But I'm the luckiest guy on the Lower East Side because I got wheels and you want to go for a ride. Sorry, I lost my spot. Here we go. Look at you, Augie, he said, smiling ear to ear. Look at you, looking so grown up and spiffy. I can't believe you're graduating from the 5th grade. I know, it's pretty awesome, right? I nodded. Feels like just yesterday that you started. Remember, I still had that Star Wars braid hanging from the back of my head? Oh my gosh, that's right, he said, rubbing his palm over his forehead. You hated that braid, didn't you, Dad? Hate is a strong word, but I definitely didn't love it. You hated it. Come on, admit it, I teased him. No, I didn't hate it, he smiled, shaking his head. But I will admit to hating that astronaut helmet you used to wear. Do you remember? The one Miranda gave me? Of course I remember. I used to wear that thing all the time. Good God, I hated that thing, he said, and almost more to himself. I was so bummed when it got lost, I said. Oh, it didn't get lost, he answered casually. I threw it out. Wait, what? I said. I honestly didn't think I heard him right. That the day is beautiful, and so are you, he was singing. Dad, I said, turning the volume down. What? He said. You threw it out? He finally looked at my face and saw how mad I was. I couldn't believe he was being so matter of fact about the whole thing. I mean, to me, this was a major revelation, and he was acting like it was no big deal. Augie, I couldn't stand seeing that thing cover your face anymore, he said clumsily. Dad, I loved that helmet. It meant a lot to me. I was so bummed beyond belief when it got lost. Don't you remember? Of course I remember, Augie, he said softly. Oh, Augie, don't be mad. I'm sorry, I just couldn't stand seeing you wear that thing on your head anymore, you know? I didn't think it was good for you. He was trying to look me in the eye, but I wouldn't look at him. Come on, Augie, please try to understand, he continued, putting his hand over my chin and tilting my face toward him. You were wearing that helmet all the time, and the real truth is, I miss seeing your face, Augie. I know you don't always love it, but you have to understand. I love it. I love this face of yours, Augie, completely and passionately, and it broke my heart that you were always covering it up. He was squinting at me like he really wanted me to understand. Does Mom know? I said. He opened his eyes wide. No way, are you kidding? She would have killed me. She tore the place apart looking for that helmet, Dad. I mean, she spent like a week looking for it in the closet, in the laundry room, everywhere. I know, he said, nodding. That's why she'd kill me. And then he looked at me, and something about his expression made me start laughing, which made him open his mouth wide, like he'd realized something. Wait a minute, Augie, he said, pointing his finger at me. You have to promise you will never tell Mommy about this. Smiled and rubbed my palms together like I was getting very greedy. Let's see, I said, stroking my chin. I'll be wanting a new Xbox when it comes out next month, and I'll definitely be wanting my own car in about 6 years. A red Porsche would be nice, and he started laughing. I love it when I'm the one who makes Dad laugh, since he's always the funny man that gets everybody laughing. oh boy, he said, shaking his head. You have really grown up. The part of the song we love to sing the most started to play, and I turned up the volume, and we both started to sing. I'm the ugliest guy on the Lower East Side, but I've got wheels, and you want to go for a ride. Want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride. We always sang this last part at the top of our lungs, trying to hold that last note long as the guy who sang the song, which always made us crack up. While we were laughing, we noticed Jack had arrived and was walking over to our car. I started to get out. Hold on, said Dad. I just want to make sure you've forgiven me, okay? Yes, I forgive you. He looked at me gratefully. Thank you. But don't ever throw anything else of mine out again without telling me. I promise. I opened the door, and just as Jack reached the car, Hey, Jack, I said. Hey, Augie. Hey, Mr. Pullman, said Jack. How you doing, Jack, said Dad. See you later, Dad, I said, closing the door. Good luck, guys, Dad called out, rolling down the front window. See you on the other side of 5th grade. We waved, and he turned on the ignition and started to pull away. But then I ran over. He stopped the car. I put my head in the window so Jack wouldn't hear what I was saying. Can you guys not kiss me a lot after graduation? I asked quietly. It's kind of embarrassing. I'll try my best. Tell Mom, too. I don't think she'll be able to resist, Augie, but I'll pass it along. Bye, dear old Dad. He smiled. Bye, my son, my son. Take your seats, everyone. Jack and I walked right behind a couple of 6th graders into the building and then followed them to the auditorium. Mrs. G was at the entrance, handing out the programs and telling kids where to go. 5th graders, come down the aisle to the left, she said. 6th graders to the right. Everyone come in, come in. Good morning. Go to your staging areas. 5th graders to the left, 6th graders to the right. The auditorium was huge. Big, sparkling chandeliers. Red velvet walls. Rows and rows of cushioned seats leading up to the giant stage. We walked down the wide aisle and followed the signs to the 5th grade staging area, which was a big room to the left of the stage. Inside were 4 rows of folding chairs facing the front of the room, which was where Miss Rubin was standing, waving to us as soon as we walked in. Okay, kids, take your seats, she was saying, pointing to the rows of chairs. Don't forget you're sitting alphabetically. Come on, everybody, take your seats. Not too many kids had arrived yet, though. The ones who weren't listening to her, me and Jack, were sword fighting with our rolled up programs. Hey, guys. It was Summer walking over to us. She was wearing a light pink dress, and I think a little makeup. Wow, Summer, you look awesome, I told her, because she really did. Really? Thanks. You do too, Augie. Yeah, you look okay, Summer, said Jack, kind of matter-of-factly, and for the first time I realized that Jack had a crush on her. This is so exciting, isn't it? Said Summer. Yeah, kind of, I answered, nodding. Oh man, look at this program, said Jack, scratching his forehead. We're going to be here all freaking day. I looked at the program. Headmaster's opening remarks, middle school director's address, light and day, 5th grade commencement address, Pock Bell, Canon in D, 6th grade student commencement address, under pressure, middle school dean's address, awards presentation. Why do you think that? Because Mr. Jansen's speeches go on forever, said Jack. He's even worse than Mr. Tushman. My mom said that she actually dozed off when he spoke last year, Summer added. What's the awards presentation? I asked. That's when they give medals to the biggest brainiacs, Jack answered, which would mean Charlotte and Eczema will win everything in 5th grade, like they won everything in 4th grade and 3rd grade. Not in 2nd grade? I laughed. They didn't give awards out in 2nd grade, he answered. Maybe you'll win this year, I joked. Not unless they give awards for the most C's, he laughed. Everybody take your seats. Miss Rubin started yelling louder, and she was getting annoyed that nobody was listening. We have a lot to get through, so take your seats. Don't forget you're sitting in alphabetical order. A through G is in the first row, H through N is in the second row, O through Q is in the third row, and R through Z is in the last row. Let's go, people. We should sit down, said Summer, walking toward the front section. You guys are definitely coming to my house after this, right? I called out after her. Definitely, she said. Her seat was next to Eczema Chin. When did summer get so hot? Jack muttered in my ear. Shut up, dude, I said, laughing as we headed toward the 3rd row. Seriously, when did that happen? He whispered, taking the seat next to me. Mr. Will, Miss Rubin, last time I checked, W came between R and Z, yes? Jack looked at her blankly. Dude, you're in the wrong row, I said. I am? And the face he made as he got up to leave which was a mixture of looking completely confused and looking like he had just played a joke on someone. Totally cracked me up. A simple thing. About an hour later, we were all seated in the giant auditorium and waiting for Mr. Tushman to give his middle school address. The auditorium was even bigger than I imagined it would be, bigger than the one in Via's school. I looked around and there must have been 1,000,000 people in the audience. Okay, maybe not 1,000,000, but definitely a lot. Thank you, Headmaster Jansen, for those very kind words of introduction, said Mr. Tushman, standing behind the podium on the stage as he took the microphone. Welcome, my fellow teachers and members and faculty. Welcome, parents and grandparents, friends, honored guests, and most especially to my 5th and 6th grade students. Welcome to the Beecher Prep Middle School graduation ceremonies. Everyone applauded. Every year, continued Mr. Tushman, reading from his notes with his reading glasses way down at the tip of his nose, I am charged with writing 2 commencement addresses, one for 5th and 6th grade graduation ceremony and one for 7th and 8th grade ceremony that will take place tomorrow. And every year I say to myself, let me cut down on some of my work and just write one address that I can use for both situations. Seems like it shouldn't be that hard of a thing to do. And yet every year I still end up with 2 different speeches, no matter what my intentions. And I finally figured out why this year. It's not as you might assume, simply because tomorrow I'm talking to an older crowd with middle school experience that is largely behind them, whereas your middle school experience is largely in front of you. No, I think it has more to do with the particular age that you are at right now, this particular moment in your lives. Even after 20 years of my being around students this age still moves me. Because you're at the cusp, kids. You're at the edge between childhood and everything that comes after. You're in transition. We're all here gathered today, Mr. Tushman continued, taking his glasses and using them to point at the audience. All your families and friends and teachers, to celebrate not only your achievements of this past year, Beecher Middle Schoolers, but your endless possibilities. When you reflect on this past year, I want you all to think about where you are now and where you've been. You've all gotten a little taller, a little stronger, a little smarter, I hope. Here some of the audience chuckled. But the best way to measure how you've grown isn't by your inches or the number of laps you can run around the track, or even by your grade point average, though those things are important, to be sure. It's what you've done with your time and how you've chosen to spend your days and whom you've touched this year. That to me is the greatest measure of success. There's a wonderful line in the book by J.M. Barrie, and no, it's not Peter Pan, and I'm not asking you to clap if you believe in fairies. Here everyone laughed again. But in another book by J.M. Barrie, called The Little White Bird, he writes, he started flipping through a small book on his podium until he found the page he was looking for, and then he put on his reading glasses. Shall we make a new rule of life? Always to try to be a little kinder than is necessary. Here Mr. Tushman looked up at the audience. Kinder than is necessary, he repeated. What a marvelous line, isn't it? Kinder than is necessary. Because it's enough to be kind. One should be kinder than needed. Why I love that line, the concept it reminds me is that we carry with us as human beings. Not just the capacity to be kind, but the very choice of kindness. And what does that mean? How is that measured? You can't use a yardstick. It's like I was saying before. It's not like measuring how much you've grown in a year. It's not exactly quantifiable, is it? How do we know we've been kind? What is being kind anyway? He put his reading glasses on again and started flipping through another small book. There's another passage in a different book, I'd like to share with you, he said. If you'll bear with me while I find it. Here we go. In Under the Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan. The main character is a young man facing some extraordinary challenges. There's this one part where someone helps him, a kid in class. On the surface, it's a small gesture. But to this young man, whose name is Joseph, it's, well, if you permit me. He cleared his throat, and he read from the book. It was at moments such as these that Joseph recognized the face of God in human form. It glimmered in their kindness, it glowed in their keenness, it hinted in their caring, indeed it caressed in their gaze. He paused and took off his reading glasses again. It glimmered in their kindness to him, he repeated, smiling. Such a simple thing, kindness. Such a simple thing. A nice word of encouragement given when needed. An act of friendship, a passing smile. He closed the book, he put it down, he leaned forward on the podium. Children, what I want to impart on you today is the understanding of the value of a simple thing called kindness. And that's all I want to leave you with today. I know I'm kind of infamous for my veracity. Here everybody laughed again. I guess he was known for his long speeches. But what I want you to know, my students, and take away from your middle school experience, he continued, is that the sure knowledge that in the future you make for yourselves, anything is possible. If every single person in this room made it a rule that wherever you are, whenever you can, you will try to act a little kinder than is necessary, the world would really be a better place. And if you do this, if you just a little kinder than is necessary, someone else, somewhere, someday, may recognize in you, in every single one of you, the face of God. He paused and shrugged, or whatever politically correct spiritual representation of universal goodness you happen to believe in. He added quickly, smiling, which got a lot of laughs and loads of applause, especially from the back auditorium where the parents were sitting. Awards. I liked Mr. Tushman's speech, but I have to admit, I kind of zoned out during some of the other speeches. I tuned in again as Miss Rubin started reading off the names of the kids who had made the high honor roll, because we were supposed to stand up when our names were called. So I waited and listened for my name as she went down the list alphabetically. Reed Kinsley, Maya Markowitz, August Pullman. I stood up. Then when she finished reading off the names, she asked us all to face the audience and take a bow, and everyone applauded. I had no idea in that huge crowd where my parents might be sitting. All I could see were the flashes of light from the people taking photos and parents waving their hands. I pictured Mom waving at me somewhere in the back and I couldn't see her. Then Mr. Tushman came back to the podium to present the medals for academic excellence. Jack was right. Seema Chin won the gold for the overall academic excellence in 5th grade. Charlotte won the silver. Charlotte also won a gold medal for music. Amos won the medal for overall excellence in sports, which I was really happy about because ever since the nature retreat, I considered Amos to be one of my best friends in school. But I was really, really thrilled when Mr. Tushman called Summer's name for gold medal in creative writing. I saw Summer put her hand over her mouth when her name was called. She walked up to the stage. I yelled, "Woohoo, Summer!" as loudly as I could, though I don't think she heard me. After the last name was called, all the kids who had just won awards stood next to each other on stage. Mr. Tushman said to the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am very honored to present to you this year's Beecher Prep Scholastic Achievers. Congratulations to all of you." I applauded as the kids on stage bowed. I was so happy for Summer. "The final award this morning," said Mr. Tushman, after the kids on stage returned to their seats, "is the Henry Ward Beecher Medal of Honor to students who have notable exemplary in certain areas throughout the school year. Typically, this medal has been our way of acknowledging volunteerism or service to the school." I immediately figured Charlotte would get this medal because she organized the coat drive this year, so I kind of zoned out a bit again. I looked at my watch, 10:56. I was getting hungry for lunch already. Henry Ward Beecher was, of course, the 19th century abolitionist, the fiery sermonizer of human rights, after whom this award was named, Mr. Tushman was saying when I started paying attention again. While reading up on his life in preparation of this award, I came across a passage that he wrote seemed particularly consistent with the themes I touched on earlier, themes I have been ruminating upon all year long. Not just the nature of kindness, but the nature of one's kindness, the power of one's friendship, the test of one's character, the strengths of one's courage. And here the weirdest thing happened. Mr. Tushman's voice cracked a bit, like he got all choked up. He actually cleared his throat and took a big sip of water. I started paying attention, for real now, to what he was saying. "The strength of one's courage," he repeated quietly, nodding and smiling. He held up his right hand like he was counting off. "Courage, kindness, friendship, character. These are the qualities that define us as humans and propel us on occasion to greatness. And this is what Henry Ward Beecher Medal is about, recognizing greatness." But how do we do that? How do we measure something in greatness? Again, there's no yardstick for this kind of thing. How do we define it? Well, Beecher actually had an answer for that. He put his reading glasses on again, leafed through a book, and started to read. "Greatness," Beecher wrote Beecher, "lies in not being strong, but in the right using of strength. He is the greatest whose strength carries up the most hearts." He is the greatest, he finally continued, whose strength carries up the most hearts by attraction of his own. Without further ado, this year I am proud to award the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to a student whose quiet strength has carried up the most hearts. So will August Pullman please come up here to receive this award? And I'm going to pause there. I want you to finish reading on your own these last 3 chapters. And I hope you enjoyed this book the same way that I did. It was such a good book, and I think you will really enjoy it. So, attached is the book. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and on Monday we will start something new. Bye.